thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Monday, January 15th, and today is National Bagel Day. It's National Booch Day. National
Bagel.
What's that?
Bagel.
Yeah, Booch. Okay. It's also
Bagel. Yeah.
National Strawberry Ice Cream Day. National Hat Day. Did you comb your hair today? And it is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That's right, MLK Day, everybody. Thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look down below on your screen to see where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on our very own website. But kicking it off first today, that's right, we have the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte, who actually did his hair today and has his headphones on.
Yeah.
That's right, it is the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
Yeah, Jason. Well, as I plug this in, it's been a long morning.
I bet.
That's what happens when you're fighting for your rights over here.
Oh, you're such a fighter. Such a fighter.
Shit gets muddy. Oh. But my story today is all about the NFL. For all of you Cowboys fans out there, it's been a great weekend, hasn't it? You know what? 2 years ago, as legal wagons circled the Sackler family and CTE and brain trauma issues were going nowhere, and feeling massive public pressure to shift its long-standing policy on cannabis, the NFL finally acknowledged cannabis as a possible pain management opioid alternative, donating nearly $2 million to private studies aimed at finding how cannabis can alleviate concussions and pain. Despite Taylor Swift's boyfriend's dry snitching on 50 to 80% of his estimated NFL brethren actively partaking, Luke Scormazzo, how do you feel about that? The league has slowly relaxed its stance on cannabis. Players can now face reduced penalties for popping positive after rules were amended back in 2021, allowing players to undergo just one weed test per year at the start of training camp. What's the point of even testing if you know when you're going to get tested, you know?
That way you can pass.
You're going to be fine. Exactly. So although they didn't all out delete cannabis testing from the league's policies as they should have, it was a huge step forward for a league notoriously slow to march toward progress. Jerry Jones, the loser of the weekend, notoriously marched against Martin Luther King. Look it up. Per the article, this past summer, the NFL and its players union announced that they were joining together to fund 2 research grants worth over $500,000 each to fund independent studies on the therapeutic benefits of CBD as a pain treatment alternative to opioids for players with concussions. On February 2022, the NFL awarded $1 million in grants to 2 teams of medical researchers to study the effects of CBD on pain management and neuroprotection from concussions among elite football players. Brain injuries in football account for 65 to 95% of all fatalities, according to the Brain Injury Research Institute. Football injuries associated with brain occur at a rate of 1 in every 5.5 games. Could CBD be the antidote to CTE? We shall soon see. Researchers from the University of Virginia, recipients of over 500,000 of the NFL's 2022 grant, aim to find out. We know that CBD is anti-inflammatory, Dr. Patrick Neary, who is leading the University of Virginia study, said, according to CBC News. So it can help to reduce inflammation while still allowing the brain to recover from those good chemicals that are coming in. Now, personally, I'm inclined to say THC would be a better candidate for acute brain injuries and anti-inflammatory purposes or trauma rather than CBD, but I'm no doctor. I'm just Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News, and I want to hear y'all's thoughts on this one. Is $500,000 going to CBD brain injury research a good use of money or no? What do y'all think?
Just $500,000? That's it?
Not even a drop in the bucket, dude. Not even a drop in the bucket.
That's tiddlywinks.
NFL makes money. So many billions of dollars a year, and they know this killing people, and they just put $2 million here.
Go
figure it out, guys. CBD.
I actually had this conversation during the Cowboys game with a bunch of fans yesterday, and I think that the NFL, in regards to its policies, since they have this head injury situation going on, that I think that they should institute the skunk rule. Like when we used to play Tecmo Bowl and Madden, if you all of a sudden you were down by 21, game over, boom, boom, boom. I think the NFL
controller.
Yep, I think the insurance industry would get behind it. I think the NFL Players Union would get behind it. The only people I think that wouldn't get behind it is the advertisers.
Dude, I was just delighted to see last year. I didn't see any of those opioid commercials. Just 5 years ago, watching the NFL, watching the Super Bowl, you'd see like 2 out of 5 commercials were for some of these opioids, with all of these, with like a 30-second long reading of the disclaimers of what harm that these things will do to you. And remember when Lowell Smokes tried to do a commercial? And they panned that shit.
I do remember that.
They wouldn't even put real medicine out there, but you have the number 1 and 2 advertisers on there, which is Big Pharma and Big Alcohol with Budweiser and like all this shit. And people are getting hopped up on drugs and people are getting drunk as hell going to and from Super Bowl parties, but you don't even allow cannabis to be marketed, even though it was legal. So, I mean, I think this is a step in the right direction, but they need to stop masking it behind CBD, in my opinion. Just get real about it and be like, we are testing all cannabinoids. Don't just try to be tiptoe.
Rico, would you still feel the same way if that was the CBD is the Trojan horse for the rest of it? Because understand the general concept of America, your American that watches football, your regular working class American, CBD is okay now. CBD is not a big deal. CBD, we can get it everywhere. CBD's accepted, right? So now we can kind of say, okay, hey, we're going to do these studies on CBD. I agree with both of you guys on the funding, though. I mean, can you even hire staff for $500,000? That's one person, right? In a lab, I feel like, especially at this level where you're testing whether or not go ahead.
Yeah. I feel like we were at that CBD as the entry point. I feel like we were at that point maybe 7 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
Now,
sure.
I think now we're past that, and we have so many states that have legalized since then, and where the real power of this plant lies. CBD was a great initial pop back in 2017, 2018 when it was all the rage, but now people know that. Come on, bro, it's THC. That's where the medicine is. And that's what's really
well. It's everything. It's everything. It's right. It's not just THC. It's not just CBD. That's the problem that the problem we are all arriving at is that we isolate these compounds And then we say, oh, they're not as effective. Well, that's because you've isolated the plant, and the plant isn't in nature. Like, the plant doesn't arrive like that as a medicine, and we're tweaking with it and messing with it. And sometimes we can make advancements like that, but we got to be careful because it's a slippery slope, right? Then you get somebody who says, oh, only THC or only CBD, and then I feel like we are missing some of the benefits when we.
Agreed.
I mean, look, 500,000 is a step in the right direction. But to your point, Rico, given the scale of the NFL and the associated budgets, it's more like a press release grade dollar amount than it is a move the needle substantially forward dollar amount. I think that they probably chose CBD only, not because the science dictates that CBD only research, it will be the most effective, but because this is the most palatable for their viewership. And so, again, if we think about prioritizing viewership versus the well-being and health of the players, then we can obviously acknowledge that there's room for improvement. No group of people in the United States would probably more greatly benefit from cannabis as medicine than young men who go racing down a field and hurling their body into unknown spaces, typically colliding with other players. So I hope that this is a step in the right direction. What I would have preferred would be an announcement that indicated this type of dollar per year for X number of years, or that this was the dollar amount for year one with escalating dollar amounts over years 2, 3, 4, and 5. But I'm not mad at it.
I'm mad at it. They should have been putting like $4.2 million just to start off with something like this. They're trying to take it seriously. $500,000 isn't anything. It's basically it sets up the framework to study. It doesn't even.
Roger Goodell made like $50 million.
Exactly.
Yeah, Roger Goodell, the commissioner, made $50 million last year.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is
you put in like $2 million. Yeah, that multi-billion.
So this is like 1% of his paycheck. Like one.
This is nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
After denying the fact that CTE and these brain injuries were actually killing folks for nearly 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is like for real. Like after denying for nearly 30 years and giving this paltry ass payment to help these guys that are like literally dying in their 50s from brain injuries from the NFL. You're like, oh, well, you know, and pumping all of these opioids on their players for decades. You put $2 million into, maybe cannabis will work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just feeling peaceful because today is Martin Luther King Day. Otherwise, I would be a lot more ranty. And then last week when I went on my tirade, the internet crashed. So I'm trying to be a gentler version of myself, especially on Bagel Day, right? Like Bagel Day really matters to me as well.
Don't believe the media hype. Martin Luther King was a fucking radical, man. He was a radical, and he was a problem to the status quo. So like all this bullshit, like, oh yeah, well, you know, like he was marching, like yeah, he was marching because he didn't want to go like fist to fist, like gun to gun, like Malcolm X's path forward. But he was 100% public enemy number one. They hated the shit out of him because of him speaking out on shit like this, straight up.
And on that, we're gonna go to a commercial, and we're gonna be right back.
Oh man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
There were a few good ones in there.
Yes. He is known for smoking the best weed in the world. And chances are at least 3 of his Republican friends will be misquoting Martin Luther King today.
Oh, God.
Jason Beck.
I doubt there'll be misquoting. I doubt there'll be misquoting. I doubt that. We only deal with real truth over here. Real truth, Rico, whether you want to admit it or not. But I'll tell you what's happening. Happening today out in South Dakota, you guys. A House committee passes a bill requiring notice that medical marijuana card holders cannot legally own firearms. That's right. South Dakota medical marijuana dispensaries would be required to add an acknowledgement on applications for cannabis that the user could not legally purchase or own firearms or ammunition under federal law if they have a card. While medical cannabis is legal in South Dakota and many other states, federal law still classifies all marijuana as a Schedule I drug with no medical use and being highly addictive. The House Judiciary Committee passed HB 1024 11-0 this morning, basically on Friday morning. The committee also passed a companion bill, HB 1036, requiring dispensaries to post a notice about the federal restriction. That vote was 8-4 in favor of the measure. Republican Representative Kevin Jensen from Canton sponsored both bills. Jensen teaches gun safety and courses for concealed pistol permits. The bill, HB 1024, only requires an additional statement on the medical marijuana card about firearms, and Jensen said, "It's an acknowledgement. Then it's up to the consumer." Jensen compared the notice to posting speed limits. Cannabis Industry Association lobbyist Jeremiah Murphy spoke against both measures. He said federal courts are still considering the constitutionality of the federal government's position on medical marijuana, and he said there are federal laws that say the federal government cannot interfere with medical marijuana. The federal law means what it means, Murphy testified. You can't interfere with medical marijuana at the program or individual level. There was some opposition, however, to the bill requiring dispensaries to post that having a medical marijuana card legally procures firearm purchases or ownership, and some committee members felt the posting requirement was too much interference in an already heavily regulated industry. The bill would also provide a $250 a day fine on dispensaries that fail to post the notice. Both measures now move to the House of Representatives for consideration. Well, I'll tell you what, this guy is definitely, I'm not going to consider him a constitutionalist because he is trying to step all over your Second Amendment right, Representative Kevin Jensen out of South Dakota, and I represent any South Dakotans move to get this guy out of office and replace him with someone else. But nonetheless, that's just my thoughts, and what do you guys have to say? This is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do you think?
Get him out of here.
Right?
Get out of here.
I mean, $250 a day, too, for not posting a sign saying that you are not constitutionally legal to purchase or own a firearm if you're a cannabis consumer. I never read anywhere in the Constitution that if you use cannabis that procures you from owning a firearm.
I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to say I'm pretty sure the Constitution was written on cannabis. Bam! How about that, buddy?
I don't think it actually was.
You took my line.
I don't think it actually was. That's a misnomer.
The original drafts were done on hemp. Now the one that you see in the National Archives, yes, is not on hemp. But the original drafts were.
There we go.
But is this Jason actually checking facts?
I'm the biggest fact checker I know.
Oh my God!
Listen, in Washington used to require you to grow a certain number of acreage of hemp if you grew a certain acreage of any agricultural product.
Right. That's very, very true, yeah. Nick. You were actually during World War II. You were actually frowned upon if you were a farmer and you weren't cultivating hemp. Like there was, you were shunned amongst the farming community.
It was unpatriotic.
Virginia. Yeah, and in Virginia, man, in Virginia, they had a law against like owning a certain amount of land and not growing hemp on that land. Mm-hmm. But then when slavery fell apart and white people realized that they weren't that good at growing cannabis, what happened then, Jason? Prohibition came. That
is not how that started, Rico. That is one of your anecdotal
little
skirts.
I mean, this whole thing troubles me, okay? Because we do, as a country, need to have a conversation about gun rights, the Second Amendment, the dependent clause, and we have a major issue when it comes to typically young men shooting up schools. And we also talk about the stigma leaving regulated cannabis, and the stigma doesn't leave regulated cannabis until cannabis users can have the same Second Amendment rights that the rest of the country has. So I think this country is long overdue to have a robust discussion about modernizing our understanding of what the Second Amendment means. And I think in some places that might mean, like, if you're under 25 and your brain is still physically developing, that you might not get access to a 30-round magazine or an AR-15. But I also think that it means that when we think about expungement for cannabis felons, that we acknowledge that if they don't get their Second Amendment rights back, unless they get a pardon from the governor, that that's not fair either. And so this notion that access to firearms can be restricted because of access to cannabis is just crazy. It's crazy to begin with, and it's definitely crazy in 2024. And there's just no data to support this connection that cannabis use and irresponsible firearm use are connected in any way. And so it just really feels like a relic policy that is unfair to people who like guns and to people who like weed.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think. Go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to say that I think they're two separate arguments. I think there's an argument about the Second Amendment and what that looks like in practicality, in reality, in 2024. And then there's also restricting people from any amendment in the Bill of Rights for any reason. We have to be really careful when we do that, right? There's a reason why we included a 10 Amendment Bill of Rights to the end of the Constitution, because we thought it was so important for people to have. So when you start creating prohibitions and restrictions on those rights, you have to be very, very careful, because it's a slippery slope now. Look where we are a couple hundred years later, to where now it's not every American has a right to bear arms, right? Only certain Americans do. And then let me go ahead and check you off the list if you've done anything that I think is wrong or not good. Now, you're right. We do have an issue with guns and schools and all those things. But I think that's more of like also a separate issue, right? I think that's more of like the media glorifying school shootings, and then people having this, famous complex where they are nobodies and they want to be small towns and they want to be famous. Like, those are different, complex, separate issues, because these school shootings, guns have been around for hundreds of years, just been around for a couple of decades in the rapid manner that they're happening in. So I think, these are all separate, very important issues that need to be spoken about, need to be discussed, and need to be hashed out. You shouldn't restrict, in my opinion, you should not restrict any medical cannabis user or any cannabis user from any of their bill of rights for any reason. That is just not valid. It's not valid if I have an ailment that cannabis helps me function or not suffer, and then I can't have my gun now. I can't protect my family. I can't be in a rural area where I hunt or do any of those things. Like, this is just madness. This is not how the Constitution was originally intended. This is not what our framers meant, and this is not what many people even intend today. So when we get these situations mixed up, right, we get a confluence of a lot of issues and really hot topics, and then we don't really get to drill down on what the real issues are of each subject. So I feel like when we're able to separate them out, then we can drill down and say what's what on each.
Yeah, we're moving away from freedom.
Mm-hmm.
We should have less rules and not more rules. And if you claim to be about freedom, you claim to be about individual rights, yet you're willing to trade something that you don't agree with politically with something that you claim to be 100% against on the other end. Nah, man, it doesn't have to be tit for tat.
Mm-hmm.
Do the right thing.
Yeah.
Instead of weed for the people or weed for warriors, now people have to choose between weed or weapons. And it's an unfair construct for those who might need or choose to use medical cannabis to jeopardize their right to keep and bear arms. And so you're right, Luke, instead of mixing the melting pot of issues, because there are, guns and access to guns, and the conversation around guns is a hot button topic these days because of all the stuff that we see in the news, because of all the tragedies, because of all the unnecessary loss. But you're right. If we boil this down, why should anybody have to have their constitutional rights diluted for any reason? And Rico, you're absolutely correct. Our country is moving away from liberties and personal freedoms and choice to layer upon layer upon layer of restriction, complication, and a lack of logic. And this is a great example of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys on this, and I'm going to even say that Representative Kevin Jensen, you are not a true Republican. You are not about freedom. You are about restriction, and the fact that you are motioning against the Second Amendment, I'd even encourage the NRA to look at their funding for your campaign. And on that,
NRA's hold on. NRA's funding something. NRA ain't got no money. What you talking about, Jason?
NRA got all the money, bro. Don't get it twisted. They got deep pockets.
No money, man.
They got deep pockets, bro. Deep pockets.
Spending that shit at Cheesecake Factory.
Oh boy. Well, coming up next,
they got an ammo box of Benjamins buried under the office.
Oh
right.
God. Coming up next, it's the Sebastopol Sage. That's right. It's Mr. Yarrow Kubrin, who does cannabis, does a little bit of real estate, and every once in a while he gets to do cannabis and real estate at the same damn time. That's right, it is none other than Mr. Yarrow Kubrin.
Good morning. Hi at 9 viewers. Jason, thank you for the intro. It keeps getting better, smoother, and more refined. Very nice to be here on Martin Luther King Day and to share the screen with the esteemed guest, Luke Scormazzo, probably butchering his last name, but everything Italian sounds like a dish I just want to order and eat. I have a bit of a long article today, so I'm going to jump right into it. If I was a cooler guy, I would have been Jason and thrown it through an AI machine and consolidated it. I'm not that cool. I'm going to drink a little more coffee and just spit this one out at you as quickly as possible. So my article today, Weed Kills, How Investing in Cannabis Almost Took Down Scott's Miracle-Gro. The gardening giant bet $1.7 billion on lighting, nutrients, and other cultivation tools and lost. But CEO Jim Hagedorn and his son Chris are plotting a comeback. Here's how they plan to smoke the competition. It's a beautiful, chilly November day in Las Vegas, and Jim Hagedorn, the CEO, president, and chairman of Ohio-based lawn care giant Scott's Miracle-Gro, pissed off. After nearly a decade of making a series of audacious bets on the legal cannabis industry, Scott spent $1.7 billion building pot-focused subsidiary Hawthorne Gardening Company and acquiring grow light manufacturers, hydroponic supply outfits, plant nutrient makers, and other cannabis cultivation supply companies. He admits the venture has been an abject failure. Inside his company's booth at MJ Biz, the largest annual cannabis industry expo held at the Las Vegas Convention Center, Hagedorn throws a booklet of rolling papers across the table to make a point. This is what our equity is worth, the 68-year-old Hagedorn says, referring to Hawthorne, which is run by his 39-year-old son, Chris. When we started making acquisitions in the cannabis industry, it felt righteous as shit, said the notoriously foul-mouthed former F-16 fighter pilot who named his private jet F-Bomb. Back in 2015, when only 4 states, Alaska, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, had legalized recreational marijuana, Hawthorne started spending hundreds of millions of dollars acquiring companies like General Hydroponics for $120 million, a Santa Rosa-based indoor gardening supply company, to get into the marijuana industry's ancillary market. The move helped the Hagedorns grab glossy magazine headlines, and Scott's stock price started to rise from the mid-50 range to above $60 a share. In 2021, the company agreed to acquire a more cannabis-focused companies like Lux Lighting, purchased for $213 million, and a deal closed in 2022. A grow light company started by the founders of respected weed brand Jungle Boys and brokered a $150 million convertible debt deal with Canadian cannabis investment company RIV Capital. Scott's stock bloomed to a robust $244. But thanks to the marijuana industry's prolonged recession driven by the oversupply of cannabis, the crashing wholesale price per pound of weed, a punitive federal tax code applied to cannabis companies, a lack of movement at the federal level to legalize marijuana, and sales at Scott's dropping from $4.9 billion in 2021 to $3.5 billion in 2023, Scott's share price cratered 75% from its 2022 to 2023 and posted a net loss of $48 million for the year. Had to terminate 1,000 employees from its 1,300-person staff and shuttered Lux Lighting after disposing of $200 million worth of unsold inventory in a landfill, which we covered here on High at 9 News. The company is now worth zero or less than zero, says Hagedorn or Hagedorn. I can't pronounce your name, but I like what you're doing.
Hagedorn.
Look, says Hagedorn, wearing a National Rifle Association hat emblazoned with a Don't Tread on Me logo, pot almost took us down. So why is the billionaire family in Vegas in the middle of a cannabis conference? He lifts both fists, extends his middle finger in the air triumphantly. I mostly want to say F you to the industry, he says. There are people, even good friends of ours, who made fun of Scott's for our investment in pot, how we effed it all up and are disrespectful about it. And he isn't just paranoid about feeling disrespected. Bring up Scott's in front of cannabis investors and they'll laugh and hurl insults, like how the Hagedorns are fucking morons and arrogant idiots for blowing through $1.7 billion. One New York investor said Scott's pulled off one of the worst deals in the history of cannabis in 2022 when RIV, at the behest of the Hagedorns, bought New York-based licensed cannabis cultivator and dispensary operator Etain for $247 million. So the father and son team are smart, and they're humble enough to roll with the abuse. During the November 2023 earnings call, he said, "You can throw shit at us, we deserve it." Besides, they have a plan to spin out Hawthorne from Scott's, an announcement that helped the stock jump 8% in one day. Ultimately, the goal is to create the Procter & Gamble of marijuana, Hagedorn said, with a whiff of irony by selling Hawthorne to a publicly traded cannabis company like Curaleaf, Trulieve, Green Thumb Industries, or Verano. None of these companies commented to Forbes about the potential deal. At the height of 2021, Hawthorne generated $1.4 billion in sales, posting $164 million in profit. But in 2023, the unit generated $454 million in sales and posted $48 million in loss. And most of Scott's $2.6 billion in debt belongs to Hawthorne. Hagedorn says that there is one rule: Hawthorne cannot stay inside of Scott's. Or as he puts it, Hawthorne and Chris need to get out of Dad's basement. It's not that Hawthorne, which owns more than 20 companies that make everything a farmer needs to grow designer indoor marijuana from lighting to nutrients, doesn't have value. Matt Garth, Scott's CFO, concedes that Hawthorne is a detractor to Scott's overall valuation, but looks forward to a future where there's a lot more value. The younger Hagedorn adds that Hawthorne's crown jewel is a 40,000 square foot research and development facility in Kelowna, British Columbia, which was built in partnership with a licensed Canadian cannabis company. Completed in 2021, the facility is where Hawthorne tests its products against competitors to see how they best increase harvest yield, THC potency, and consistency. Hawthorne has two other R&D facilities in the U.S., one in Oregon and one in Ohio, that test equipment on hemp plants. Since the facility is federally illegal in the U.S. and Scott's is a publicly traded firm, the company must run R&D on weed's federally legal cousin hemp. Chris refers to Hawthorne's R&D facilities as earth-changing and an asset that could be combined with the cannabis company to create a fully vertical integrated cannabis corporation that makes everything from grow lights to weed to retail stores. So I've got another 3 paragraphs, and I'm going to wrap it up like Dave Chappelle says with the wrap it up box. But what I really want to talk about here is, did they make a mistake, or have they taken a medium to long-term view, and it's time to buy the dip? Because broadly, the industry has been battered for more than a minute, and valuations are down. I'd like to hear what you viewers think in our chat on YouTube, as well as what the other esteemed panelists here on High at 9 News have to think about Hawthorne. Thumbs up, thumb sideways, thighs down. What do you guys think?
I think they're going to sell it off and then buy it back at the low.
Oh, they're going to do the Isaac Tigrit move. You guys know who Isaac Tigrit is, right?
What is that?
Isaac Tigrit is.
There's a few things here.
Go ahead.
One, I just want to get out some house cleaning things. They lost $2.6 billion with a B.
With a B, baby.
Yeah, with a B.
With a B.
That's
1.7 is what they've deployed.
Oh, they're just in debt. $2.6 billion total. Okay, so $1.7 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was the first thing. That was just like, I just want to make that clear for the readers. That's with a B, billion.
Yep.
And they're about to go under after spending nearly $2 billion. Okay, but we'll just move forward. I love, and I need to figure out how to do this myself, but because this is awesome, how the Jungle Boys got referred to as respected weed brand Jungle Boys. Shout out to the Jungle Boys. I don't know how you get to the level when regular journalists say like your shit is respected in the game like that, but hey, man, it's dope. I got to get on that line. And then lastly, their crown jewel is a facility in Canada. Like, come on. Are you serious?
It's a Midsworld.
You're testing against, they said that's where we're going to test the best against the best. That's like, what are you having like people, like the slowest people in the world race against each other? Like, what do you mean? Like testing in Canada, that can't be your crown jewel. That had to have been like a misprint or something. That's all I got to say.
I think they're doing that for the tax benefits.
I would say that, yeah.
I think they're doing that for the tax benefits.
This is a juicy story, though, man. There's a lot of stuff, like little things, like you pointed out, Luke. There's a lot of little things, little shout outs in there that the common reader would not think twice about. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this article. But me and being in the financial industry at one point and seeing like a lot of this stuff come through financial periodicals, which Forbes can kind of be named that these days. They're more of a pay-to-play outlet. But I would say, losing $2 billion for Scott's Miracle-Gro, like they're averaging between $3 and $4 billion in profit every single quarter. That is not a big amount for them, but it is good to have that off the books right now while we are in a recession. I know they're going to fight the actual meaning of a recession this time again under Joe Biden and try to say that we're not headed towards that again. But it's a good time for them to unwind this asset, watch it tumble some more under some mismanagement by somebody else, and then gobble it right back up when they reschedule, deschedule, or whatever. And when banking comes back in, I guarantee you Scott's Miracle-Gro will be right back there buying Hawthorne and maybe a couple other of the laggers at the time. Watch.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you have to say, Rico, in respect to this article for a couple reasons. First of all, I covered their $200 million disposal of lights a couple weeks ago here on High at 9 News. And when I see that article and this article, I can't help but wonder whether they have a little PR person and they're seeding the journalistic ecosystem so that they can set themselves up to be the comeback kid. It seems like they really are living and not embellishing, but relishing in this notion that they've gotten kicked in the cojones, and what are they going to do about it? I think some of their investments, like General Hydroponics in the medium and long term, are going to be great. And I think medium term, that's fantastic. General Hydroponics from Sonoma County, California. Shout out to Larry. You do you. I'm so proud of local companies like his. And I think that the part of the challenge that I see is I'm not sure what their total overall strategy is, right? When you have a facility in Canada and you have facilities in the United States, and you're buying into a limited license market in New York with Attain Health, what I want to understand is like, what is the actual focus, right? It can't just be gobble up things left and right to create that arbitrage without having a deep vision for where they want to play in the space. But I also think that this might be a buy the dip opportunity because they do have some assets. And I don't think these guys are dumb at all. And I think they have a very established track record of playing at a very high level. So I can't speak to every single deployment of dollars that they decided to do, but I don't think they're down and out. I think they're, like they said in the article, are trying to strip away Hawthorne from being a part of Scott's, and that they've decided that that's better for both of those companies. But I wouldn't bet against these people. And I think that their early entry into cannabis, 2015 in regulated cannabis is pretty early, and that's when they acquired General Hydroponics. And so I think long and medium term, they're going to do just fine, but for deciding to throw $200 million in lights in the trash.
Right. Long story short, like they have enough money, they have enough capital on hand to play however they want to play. We have not seen the last of them. I think they're going to unwind this asset, watch the shit tumble, and then they're going to come right back.
Listen, I think too, though, I agree with both of you guys. Let me just start there. But let me say too, though, like, I think we have seen time and time again in this industry that just because you have a ton of money does not mean you're going to be successful. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you throw into something, you're not throwing it into something that works or that's viable. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that's the case with Hawthorne or with Miracle-Gro or with whatever they got going. I don't know even all of the details of all their investments and where they lost money and what they even have that is viable to make money. But I will say this. You can get a brand or you can get a operator license or extract facility or laboratory, and you can dump tons and tons and tons and tons of money in and just throw your hands up and say, hey, why isn't this working? Oh, so hard, the industry's so tough, and all these other things, right? If you don't know this industry and you don't have stakeholders that know how to operate within this industry and know the nuances of this, you're not going to make it in this industry on that level. You're coming in when there's people that have already been established in this industry that are, it's like Hawthorne's lane like is already filled with a lot of cars, is my point. You know what I'm saying? So like, if you think like, oh, you're jumping off the freeway and then you're getting back on the freeway and then you're going to pass up or even catch up to all these cars that have already blocked, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I don't think any amount of money thrown into that situation is going to make it successful. But again, like, I don't know all the details of it. I'm just saying, I'm just merely saying as a word of caution, anyone in this industry, don't think that you can just keep throwing bad money after good and think it's gonna work. If it's not working, listen, there's a reason why it's not working. Analyze that and try to fix that.
I think everybody's pretty much right on this one, Luke. And it has nothing to do with like knowing what their plans are or anything like that. Because as Yarrow said, getting in 2015, you saw the pop in 2016, 2017, rode that wave up, and then it's been all downhill since then. So, I mean,
I think if they had stayed narrowly focused on nutrients, which, I mean, when I think of Scott's Miracle-Gro, I think of like lawn feeder and stuff like that. And so I think they started off on the right foot. If they had consolidated the nutrient industry, if they had helped move the conversation from sulfate nutrients to biologicals, if they had just stayed in a nutrient lane, I think they'd probably be in a better position now.
Well, we're going to keep this train rolling. We're going to go right into a commercial, and we're going to be right back. The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated. Stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you've not subscribed already. Also, make sure you hit that like button. I know you'll appreciate it, we'll appreciate it, and even YouTube will appreciate it. All of the stories that you see that we cover today, you can definitely go and read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. And this Friday, in the city of Modesto, Luke Scormazzo will be dropping the Prophet brand from 3 to 7. So make sure you're there and check it out.
I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get yourself a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
That's right, baby. I'm Smoky Vanilla with my background in kinesiology. I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on athletes who have chronic pain or injury due to their sport, or the legends of the chronic in the game, baby.
Oh, yeah, you know what it is. We just stretched, and now we're gonna smoke, because you know what it is.
That's right. I love intuitively creating a session based on the individual I'm working with. We'll go through a few assessments, look at the past health history, injury, or anything that's still affecting you today, and create a customized session just for you. Let's go. Woo!
Oh, yeah. Coming up next, it's the dope dad, author, activist, entrepreneur, OG, trailblazer, warrior for justice, and living proof that real ones do still exist. High Nine's very own friendly neighborhood outlaw, Luke Scormazzo.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. I know you're not used to usually hearing the outlaw news on Monday, but, you know, we thought it was MLK Day, and we're going to go ahead and say, man, thank you, Dr. King, and we're going to bring the outlaw correspondent on for that special occasion. But here we're going to travel to another side of the world. We're going to go to the Czech Republic. And I know, like, back in the day, like, you know, the Czech Republic has a checkered past where they were an Eastern Bloc country, and we had a lot of, like, you know, really restrictive rules and the Iron Curtain that were going on, you know, during the Cold War. But, you know, the Czech Republic has obviously come a long way, and that's indicated by today's headline, which reads, Czech Republic unveils cannabis legalization plan without a legal market. I mean, I can't really be mad at them because that sounds like almost every cannabis legalization plan that we rolled out, i.e. 1996 Compassionate Use Act, i.e. Washington, D.C. today, and the list just keeps going on. But anyhow, the Czech Republic has disclosed a plan to legalize adult use cannabis, but it seems there is no room for the establishment of the illegal market. Czech's local news media outlets have reported that the bill aiming to legalize adult use cannabis in Central European countries won't include regulations for the legal market. The English language media outlet Expats reported that the Czech government on January 10th presented a draft of the cannabis regulation bill. However, the bill did not mention the initially envisioned framework for a regulated cannabis market. The Czech Republic is among several European countries actively working on cannabis regulation. While recreational use remains illegal, possession of personal use was decriminalized in 2010, and medical cannabis was legalized in 2013. So they've had 10 years, over a decade, of medical cannabis legalization, and now they're trying to move to adult use. But what they're saying in the Czech Republic is, like, we can move to medical adult use, but if you have no way to get cannabis, these laws are, like, really hard to implement in real life, right? We've seen these issues play out here. It's like it still becomes a quasi-illegal, legal, gray market, whatever you want to call it, to where people, like, they don't know if they're legal. Are you buying the street? It's like, it's crazy. Like, pass the law and then pass the law, the next part of the law. It's like a two-part process, right? It's like, okay, we decriminalize, we legalize, we get everybody out of prison, and then we say, okay, how do you obtain this cannabis? How do you obtain this medicine? How do we get it to the consumers in a legal, in a regulated, in a well-established, effective way, right? Okay. In late 2022, the Czech Republic announced its efforts to draft legalization of cannabis, which also envisioned the establishment of a market. It seems that legalization, possession, home cultivation, and the establishment of cannabis social clubs sound like early 2000s in NorCal, a little bit, right? You know, home cultivation, I'm with. I love home cultivation. It really irks me when I see bills that push home cultivation out or put some type of, you know, real crazy restrictions on it, because home cultivation is how people fall in love with the plant, how they get other people excited by the plant. Even if you're not even a good grower, you just start growing and start to see the process and the creation of life creation and those things. You become more entwined with the plant, more passionate about it, and then you want to share its benefits. So home cultivation, yes. It's called the Pirate Party, I guess, unless I'm pronouncing it wrong. The Pirate Party, the many reportedly stated that the text was a compromise, and they plan to negotiate a bill which has been in development by a working group since last November. Hopefully they get it in there. But beyond the question of whether this plan, which involves domestic policy dynamics, will be successful, the legal hurdles in the European Union for implementation of the Legal Adult Use Act in the EU's countries, legalization shouldn't be underestimated. The EU right now is a really, really interesting spot for cannabis, because you're having a lot of these countries start to come online right now. And let's put it like this, they don't have a lot of the social stigma and a lot of the political grandstanding that we have in the U.S. in regard to cannabis use. Now it's there, trust me. They have crazy politicians like anyone else, but the EU is really starting to be an interesting, really interesting test case to see how cannabis laws roll out all over the. Germany initially planned to establish a legal market, but had to revise the proposal due to pushback by the European Commission. The legal framework on which the existing EU laws wouldn't allow an EU member state to establish legal adult use cannabis markets consistent with the Schengen Convention of 1995. I know I made that like perhaps Chinese, but it looks like it is closer to German, which obliges the EU countries to eliminate illicit drug trafficking and the EU's. So basically what they're saying is like, you really can't legalize it. And talk about it. We can, until we kind of change some of these framework decisions that were established in this convention in 1985. And they can easily do that, but until that changes, we're going to have a hurdle that still needs to come through. So, in fact, Malta and Luxembourg are the only two EU member states that have legalized adult use cannabis for personal use. Were able to do so because they haven't established an adult use legal market. So basically, they're saying you can do it, you just can't have a market. So I don't know, like. It's a catch-22. You create a system that you're forcing your citizens to break the law. You're forcing your citizens to go into situations where perhaps they don't have tested cannabis, perhaps they have where certain chemicals and stuff that maybe they have allergies or to. It's just it's crazy when you have these type of systems brought out, because it's like a half-cocked okay. It's like, yeah, you can go into that cabinet, right? But there's nothing in there. So good luck being satisfied. Anyway, although there are specific international legal pathways to follow that could potentially allow the establishment of legal recreational markets in the EU, these must be evaluated scrupulously. Wow. Anyhow, so the EU's coming along, man. It's an interesting thing over there. I'm excited to when I can be able to travel there. I definitely check in with the probation officer to make sure she allows me to travel over there. But I'm interested in going over there and seeing just what it looks like on the ground in a lot of these countries. Hopefully they let me in. I do have a cannabis conviction, so we don't ever know about it. I'm going to kick it back to my correspondents. What do you guys think about this situation we got over with the Czech Republic and the EU?
Man, this sounds like it's going to be an interesting place to play around with some cannabis.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, this is going to be. Will it start to compete with Barcelona? Is the question.
No, I don't think anybody.
I mean, look, I don't think many places are going to be able to compete with Barcelona because of Barcelona's history and cannabis culture. But I think the bigger challenge is these EU member nations are trying to come up with guidelines on a per country basis, probably because that's easier than getting the EU to agree on a singular standard. But I'm like, hey, Czech Republic, give me a call because I can help you with your guidelines. I consult. I will send you a Venmo link. We can take all of the aggregated information that we know over here with policy that does and doesn't work, well-intended, unintended, oops, I did it again, AKA Britney Spears, and I stepped in the same policy pothole. And so, for me, I'm just not sure whether not having guidelines is a good thing because it allows for some measure of latitude by operators, or whether not having guidelines over there is just a recipe for failure. I don't know whether it's playing chess or a mail order bride, but either way, I'm going to say checkmate.
Oh boy.
There's so many ways you could take that, and I'm not going to touch any of them.
I'm not touching
because
10-foot pole.
I'm about peace today.
Yeah, it's MLK Day.
So there is one thing that I wanted to touch on, Rico, that I'm glad you brought that up, is in 2014, I was in solitary confinement, and MLK Day had just passed, and I was reading a book, and the book went into MLK's letters from Birmingham. And I don't know if, I mean, I do know. Of course, these letters hit different while you're sitting in solitary confinement, right? Mm-hmm. So I drafted a letter, I guess. You know, I didn't think it was going to do anything. I just wrote the letter because I was feeling what you're talking about, sitting in solitary, operating a medical cannabis dispensary. So in 2014, after MLK Day, I write this letter. I send it out. High Times, Cannabis Now published it. And it's called A Call for Unity from Federal Marijuana Prisoner Scormazzo. If you guys have a chance, check it out. It's on Cannabis Now. And I just want to read a small excerpt of it, just because this is like, this hits of what we're hearing. I say, some of the leaders of our cause have criticized us for opening a dispensary in the conservative and inhospitable area of Central California. They told us to wait and find a place where the local government was more liberal, accepting of medical. We considered their fears and advice, but what history has taught us is that there is rarely a perfect moment or perfect place when you are trying to correct an injustice. When you feel your cause is morally right before God, the perfect time is now, and the perfect place is here. So I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. King before I handed it back over to everybody for the inspiration and for continuing to just push the limit and make sure that everyone has their rights, everyone is created equally, and everyone has equal opportunity.
Thank you for that, Luke. That's fucking powerful. Appreciate you sharing that with us, man.
Yes, most definitely.
And hearing your words while you were behind bars, like, really inspired a lot of us out here to make sure that we were doing our job and making sure that we were giving y'all shout outs, and we were making sure that we were backing you and your movement from behind bars too. So
yeah, 100, man. Thank you. That. And I felt it. I felt the love from the community and the support. So I really do appreciate that, brother.
It's more powerful than you know, man. That's appreciate you.
I'm gonna roll into these last couple stories real quick, so we can power these out real quick. Are you ready, Rico?
You gonna pound them out?
Yep, I'm gonna pound them out.
Pound down.
Yes, but Luke, you are gonna love this.
One-way ticket.
You're gonna love this one, Luke, because it involves home grow. You're gonna love this. An Arkansas ballot initiative would allow medical marijuana home grow and trigger adult use legalization after, guess what, you guys? That's right. You guessed it. Federal reform. A marijuana industry group on Friday proposed a constitutional amendment to improve patient access to medical cannabis and legalize the drug for adult use purposes in Arkansas if it becomes legal under federal law. Arkansas for Patient Access said it was submitting ballot language to Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin, Republican, on Friday for the Arkansas Medical Cannabis Amendment of 2024. The ballot initiative would make it legal for patients to grow their own cannabis at home and make a series of changes to Amendment 98 to the Arkansas Constitution, which Arkansas has ratified back in 2016 to legalize medical cannabis for medical use. The tweaks comprise a wish list for patients as well as cultivators and dispensaries, in quotes. The goal of this ballot proposal is to reaffirm and build upon Amendment 98 to better serve patients. Amy Martin, owner of the Greenway Dispensary in Fort Smith, said in a statement from the ballot from the ballot question committee, says this amendment reflects a commitment to the principles established by the state's voters. It reduces barriers and streamlines processes so qualifying patients can access the medicines and treatment options that best serve them. The major changes being proposed are you guys ready? Allowing patients and designated caregivers over the age of 21 to grow up to 7 mature plants and 7 younger marijuana plants. Expanding who can certify patients for medical marijuana cards from only doctors to include physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, and pharmacists. Permitting providers to qualify patients based on any medical need rather than state's current 18 qualifying conditions. That's a big one right there. Allowing healthcare providers to conduct patient assessments via telemedicine. expanding access to out-of-state residents by recognizing patient cards from other states or allowing non-residents to obtain Arkansas patient cards. Oh, wow, they got reciprocity in there. And abolishing application fees for patients seeking registry ID cards. Increasing the expiration date for new patient cards from 1 year to 3 years. And the proposal would also create a adult use cannabis trigger law permitting adults to possess up to an ounce of cannabis if the federal government removes marijuana from the schedule of controlled substances or if marijuana possession is no longer a federal crime. Interesting. Under the trigger position, commercial growth and distribution would be limited to cultivation facilities and dispensaries currently licensed in our Arkansas medical marijuana law, and a similar provision in the Arkansas adult use amendment offered by the industry back in 2022 led to it being voted down at the ballot box. Attorney David Couch, who drafted Amendment 98, and patient advocate Melissa Fultz opposed the 2022 efforts, but they have made public their support for Arkansas patient access current efforts. The group said it was submitting the measure to Griffin's office on Friday. Through a spokesperson, said the office hadn't received it as of about 3:30 p.m., and the Attorney General has 10 business days to review the measure and ballot language to determine if it is sufficient to appear in the November ballot. Canvassers would have until July 5th to gather 90,704 signatures from the registered voters to qualify for ballot access. What do you guys think about this? Home-grow in Arkansas, and they're going to trigger adult use sales.
I think we're so jaded because we're used to the most cannabis freedom, and to see like incremental change like this is just like kind of meh to me.
They technically have more. They technically would have more freedom with this because they're allowed 7 plants as opposed to 6 plants. Just saying.
Yeah, but this is their proposal. You know what I'm saying? Like,
they're talking about this as a ballot. They're saying this is going to be a ballot initiative, Rico. Like this is what the
no. They said among the proposals, yeah, the major changes being proposed. How many of those changes do you think they'll actually go through? And how many of these are just going to turn into half measures?
I don't know. I like all
just to say, oh yeah, we gave you guys something.
I like all.
I'm going to say this. Big up to Home-Grow. Everything else, I'm with Rico. Blah. Next article.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Luke. I agree with Rico. I try to be as disagreeable as possible to provide some variety of perspectives. But we all know that Home-Grow foundationally needs to be a part of the changes in laws and regulation. It's not fair to force everybody to go to a regulated dispensary and to participate in the tax charade to acquire cannabis. And so without Home-Grow, we don't have programs that are consistent with, I think, the intention of the voters, the will of the people, and the ability for people to access medicine straight up.
Interesting. All right.
A little THC two-step.
All right.
THC taxes two-step.
All right.
Ain't that right?
I got.
That's the last one you got, Jason.
I got the quick. This one's a quickie, and this is for Luke because Luke, since you joined us today, I want to make sure we had an outlaw story on here for you. All right. Are you ready for this? Because two plead guilty to bribing a Vallejo City official after illegal marijuana grow was found. That's right. Two Bay Area men were convicted on federal charges Thursday, admitting to bribing a Vallejo City official after their illegal marijuana growing operation was found, prosecutors said. According to U.S. Attorney Philip Talbert's office, 41-year-old Stephen Chu of San Bruno and 36-year-old Ben Guan of San Francisco pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit federal program bribery. That's right. Court documents said the pair were running a growing operation inside a building where they were notified about violating multiple laws back in July of 2020. The violations included codes related to illegal drug activity, and subsequently Chu and Guan offered to pay and then paid a Vallejo building inspector to clear the violations and ensure the city would not interfere with their operations, the U.S. Attorney's office said in a statement. According to prosecutors, Chu and Guan Vaughn paid the inspector at least 6 times with payments totaling $27,000. The building inspector was working with law enforcement to record meetings with the pair. The note then T demands, and Chu and Guam face up to 5 years in prison and $250,000 fine, and prosecutors said the pair are scheduled to be sentenced on May 2nd. You guys, what do you guys think about this? Bribing Vallejo building code inspectors. I mean, Yarrow, you do cannabis and real estate.
They played guilty too. So,
well, this is the thing. Let me break down what happened there for you. Old Steven and Chewy, listen, they're probably really good guys. I don't believe any of them, and this is why. What happened was you got to go back to the beginning of the story. The beginning of the story talks about how like they caught the attention of authorities, right? And they started to press them. So what ended up happening is they get raided. And what the feds did, they said this: we can either smoke you on this weed grow, or you can plead to this little like bribery thing that you guys got going on over here where, you know, whatever it is. And that's really what it was. It was a trade. It was a bargaining system. What happens in 99% of our justice system today. It's merely a transactional bartering system. And what they said is, we will either smack you with this 10-year mandatory minimum, anything above 1,000 plants or 999 plants or above will trigger a mandatory minimum of 10 years in prison, or you could take this, bribery charge, and we'll give you whatever. You go to the camp with Martha Stewart and the rest of the bunch, and spreads, and you come back out, you write a book, whatever.
So Luke, we've had this conversation multiple times this year because there has been a lot of lawsuits and shit like that popping, and a lot of people snitching. Is it considered snitching if you go out and tell on these publicly appointed officials that you grease their pockets? Is that snitching?
Yeah. Anytime, to me, of course, I take maybe a little bit of a harder stance on this because of my experiences. But anytime that your cooperation causes another individual to be incarcerated, that's snitching. I don't care how you want to flip it. I don't care who it is that you told on. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like Frank Lucas tried to get off like at the beginning talking about like, hey, I was only telling on police officers when I cooperated. Like you told on mob guys too. It's okay though, whatever, you know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. Like call a spade a spade. Like if you told on somebody and you cooperated with the authorities or the King's men back in the day, and the King's men came and grabbed somebody out of the village, guess what? You told on them, you're a snitch. Sorry. I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes, but people don't understand. Like, listen,
they had all these conversations recorded with this building inspector, because the building inspector was working with the feds to record all these conversations, all these bribes.
Right. I'd be curious to know whether the building inspector initially was bribed and then chose to bring this to the feds, or whether the building inspector from the very beginning was like, great, I'm going to catch these guys and they're going to double down and they're going to really put themselves in hot water. I also think the $27,000, if you get caught post-adult use in California, they probably could have just put that on a really robust attorney's retainer and found a way through this, got a wrist slap. I don't know if they have a criminal record or any previous entanglements or justice involved, but if they didn't, this was definitely not the right approach. And I know that corruption is more important to the FBI than cultivation. Mm-hmm. And so they seem to just go in the wrong direction in terms of resolution of this issue. And I think it's also important to note that this was not regulated cannabis. This was not a bad actor in a new industry. This was somebody who was trying to stay in the shadows and do their thing, and that didn't work out so well for them.
And Yarrow, too, this is a pretty cheap bribe also. I mean, they said they took $27,000 over the course of six payments. I mean, that breaks down to $4,500 per payment. I mean, who are you going to bribe with $4,500?
Bro, that's Vallejo, bro. Have you been to Vallejo lately?
Yeah, he's in Vallejo, bro.
I
used to be out there on Grand Magazine getting it in.
His bills ain't on LA levels, bro. Like 4,500 in Vallejo is like, that's like 20 grand here, bro.
No.
Yeah. Shout out to the hillside and the crest side. But man, listen, Vallejo's rough, bro. They're trying to get any dollar they can over there, man. Shout out to La Russell too, man, holding it down for the V-Town.
Oh, La Russell, man. We got to wrap on that, man.
I hope these guys didn't like try to 1099 this guy afterwards or something like that.
They probably did.
I hope you guys didn't make a rap video about it like some of those scammers from the fucking checks.
I mean, I just, the trouble that they could encounter for growing cannabis without a permit is this. And the trouble that they can get into for bribing is this. Like, there's not a world in which this was a strategic decision. This doesn't make any sense. It's pretty short-sighted, and now they got in a lot of hot water, whereas if they had just done a clandestine grow and got caught, they probably could have just said, oops, my bad, and not a lot would have happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know about that part, because there was federal cats, right? So like I said, the mandatory minimums go 999 at 10 years, and then the mandatory minimums continue to go up the more that you grow. So if their grow was really large, they could have been looking at a 6 time.
Yeah, but that's assuming that they started I mean, I guess you could be right about this. You very well could be right about this.
So here's where I disagree with you, Luke. It sounds like they got caught by a local building inspector and that the bribery became a federal charge. But that doesn't mean that if they got caught merely for cultivation, that would have become a federal case.
Yeah, it's hard to say that. The
majority of cultivation cases in California do not go federal unless there are some additional circumstances.
Of course, I know. I mean, my judge said that when he let me out. He said we haven't prosecuted a case in federal case in California that didn't have to do with growing on federal land in a long time. So why should Scormazzo still be in prison for this?
Mm-hmm. All true.
And they have no answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
what a fox!
I'm here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any final treatment on this one? Since it's up your lane, Yarrow. You got a little bribery. You got a little real estate. What's going on, man? Got any?
You wore a collared shirt today and everything.
I know. Looking like you might be a lawyer. You might be an investor. I don't know what you are, but you are Caucasian.
He's working for China.
The team has 2 listing appointments today, and I figured I could wear more than a T-shirt for those appointments. One in Nevada, one in Healdsburg. I go back to at its core, cannabis, with the exception of brands like Profit dropping on Friday or intellectual property. At its core, cannabis, regulated cannabis, and non-regulated cannabis is real estate first, right? And so, what comes to mind for me is like, I guess when I grew a lot of indoor cannabis, I thought about the locations that I would use, and I wouldn't have chose a location that was subject to any type of building inspection. So I think that if you're going to be renegade, you got to make better real estate and venue choices and not choose buildings where there's a chance or there's going to be city officials doing their job in a way that would interfere with your maintaining a camouflaged and stealth mode status. And then the other thing is, it said that a lot of the stuff wasn't done to code. And so there's a difference between not getting permits versus not doing things to code. Code means best practices when it comes to building standards. That keeps people from having electrical fires and burning down buildings. And permits means that you've actually gotten permission. And so I've always built to code. I didn't always get permits. And so it feels a bit rinky-dinky-dink-dink-dink. And so I just think that this guy, when he does a little bit of time on this thing, is going to have something to chew on. And, they made a series of missteps. I would never bribe a city official or a government employee, because back to Luke's point around what snitching is, we kept our circle very tight. And the people that we did dirt with, if it was dirt, allegedly, we made sure that the people who we were doing things with that created exposure for us were people that we knew, that we loved, and that we trusted. And so the moment you go outside of that model and you're doing something that is illegal and unregulated, and you invite somebody into your inner sphere and you do dirt with them and you don't know them and you haven't broken bread with them and your kids don't play on the same soccer team and you don't go back a decade, the chances that that's not going to work out is really, really high. This was not smart. There was a lot of not smart in this, and that's why we get to cover it on High at 9 News.
And that's what happens when you put squares in the circle.
Yes, right on. And speaking of that, Yarrow, I have one question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to answer, but are the teacups behind your head, are they properly permitted, and have you made sure that they are up to compliance standards for 2024?
So that's a really good question. First of all, I appreciate the continual hazing I receive as a guest commentator on High at 9 News. And yes, those are real teacups. And no, they're not a screensaver. The thing about these teacups is if these teacups were not in regulated cannabis, I can put them up on the wall and affix that. And it's between me, my wall, and the teacups. But because it's regulated cannabis, I actually had to hire a third-party expert to do a teacup study to ascertain whether these teacups had any lead in the coating and glaze that was used to fire the teacups. And then I had to hire a structural engineer to make sure that the hooks that the teacups were affixed to were sound and it wasn't going to fall on the ground. And then I had to hire an inspector and a regulator to come in and attest that the teacups have been properly installed. So outside of regulated cannabis, I can do whatever I want. Inside of regulated cannabis, it cost me $15,000 in 9 months to get permission to put the teacups on the wall.
Yeah, you got to make sure they're at least 3/4 of an inch on those hooks, man, because they will come and measure.
Clearance matters. Yeah, and I tried to bribe them, but they told me they were already making so much money on these cats in Vallejo that my budget wasn't adequate.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I've seen 2 girls with one of those cups back there.
Oh my God.
Are you talking about tea bagging or teacups? Because wherever you're going with this, I'm going to go with you.
Oh my God. On that note, thank you all for joining us today for another episode of High at 9 News, special Martin Luther King Day episode. You can catch us live weekdays, 9 a.m. Pacific, high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our super fans showing love, getting their comments posted live on the big screen, to our live audience and online supporters catching us across all media platforms, tuning in each day to the headlines of chaos, also known as the developing cannabis industry. To our vetted correspondent team tuning in from all over, bringing us much needed variety of perspective and your respective opinions to the table. To our production team, Cloud Media Partners, all the sponsors keeping our lights on and AV struggles to a minimum. And of course, Adam holding it down back there behind the scenes looking like a young Kurt Russell. Ooh, brush that hair, brother. Brush that hair. As always, Cannabis Sativa L, the reason we show up to read these stories every single day. Thank you too, boo. It has been Monday, January 15th, 2023, Martin Luther King Day 2024. Excuse me, not 2023. Show's over, and you've all been blessed with the top industry headlines. Hope it was enough for you to put in your cup, pinkies up, and sip at least until tomorrow. Y'all know who it is. Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News, cannabis industry's #1 daily news show. Scormazzo, you got us, my man.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I mean, it's a very special day today, a day to honor Dr. King. Remember, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But it wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be today if I close it out. Rico, I'm going to go ahead and send it back to you, brother. You have been an inspiration to me over the last few days, since I've met you. So go ahead and roll us out, brother, on MLK Day.
All right, yeah, man. I just want everybody to know that do not believe all of the tweets, all of the Instagram posts, and all this other shit about MLK, man. If you really want to know about the man behind the messaging, like, do your own research, man, and see how MLK really was lambasted by the entire world for the things that he would speak out on, man. And just like think about that the next time that y'all really stand behind something. Are you willing to die for it? Because way too many people have great leadership skills, great speakers, they have a platform, just to be taken out by their own government. So let that sink in, man, and just know that all of us outlaws, all of us movers and shakers, not willing to follow the lead of a government who does not work for the people. Just know there's plenty of us out here, man. If we stick together, we're gonna come out on top. Happy MLK Day.